can ricochet. Don't shoot in the water, and of course, as I reiterate, no alcohol or substances before handling the firearm. So I'll touch just briefly on this. Lincolnwood does have an assault weapon ban. There's an ordinance on the books. It's a finable offense. When I say assault weapon, though, basically the way the definition of an assault weapon is here, it is defined as basically a fully automatic weapon. So that's kind of how the definition. If you break down and read the ordinance, it is a fully automatic weapon that you cannot have. Now, there's obviously exemptions. People that are carrying part of their official duties, if they're in the military, law enforcement, federal agent, if you're a government employee, and you're possessing that weapon as a part of your official duties. We also have on the ordinance, it says dealer must have a federal firearms license. So if you're a gun dealer in Lincolnwood, you have to have a federal firearms license. That's required anyways, because you cannot sell a gun unless you're a private party selling to a private party. But if you're in the business of gun dealing, you have to have that federal firearms license. And you also have to have a license from the village, a business license specifically for selling firearms. So talked a little bit about waiting purchases after you purchase a firearm. Covered that before, but again, 72 hours for handguns, 24 hours for long guns, except in January it goes to 72 hours for every gun purchased. Firearm transfers. They enacted a couple years ago a law because there was concern of people private parties selling guns. So it's, if you have a gun and you want to sell it to your friend, it has to have an FOID. You have to have an FOID. You have to register on the website with the state police and get a transaction number. You're also required by the Firearm Owner Identification Act to keep a receipt of that transaction for 10 years that you sold the gun to them. But that transaction is registered on the website. So you get a number that says that transaction is approved. Because basically what they're doing is they want to track the transaction. They want to make sure that you and the person you're doing the transaction with has a valid FOID. Because there's really no way to do that. I mean, if you go to a gun shop, they're going to do it when they do the background check. But if you do it from private party to private party, there's really no way to do it. And that's kind of why they enacted the law, so they can kind of track. It's not so much that they're keeping track of your weapon, because they don't ask you with the serial number or anything. It's not like you have to register the gun. They're just keeping track of the actual transaction. And then we can trace those transactions as law enforcement if we need to. Like if we're investigating somebody for a crime, and we want to know that if they ever purchased a firearm, we can check with the state police to see if there was any transactions for that person. So one other thing that has to be done too is if you lose your firearm or it gets stolen, you're required now by law to report that to law enforcement within 72 hours of where that happened. So if it gets stolen in Lincolnwood, you got 72 hours to report to Lincolnwood PD. If it happens in Chicago, you got 72 hours to report to the Chicago PD. So those are all requirements per the law. First offense though is a petty offense. Second offense then would be a criminal offense. So you basically get one chance to, you'll get cited, but it's fine only. But if you do that again with regards to a stolen firearm, because sometimes what happens is people buy guns, they get rid of them illegally, and then when they get caught, they're like, oh, it was stolen. It was stolen 6 months ago, but it was used in a crime. They get cited, but if it happens again, then now they're eligible to be charged with a criminal offense. There's another law that's on the books now, clear and present danger. So this is something that allows us to notify the state police to make sure that either they have a FOID that gets revoked, or if they ever do apply for a FOID in the future, that they will be flagged and they wouldn't be eligible to get a FOID. Again, there's always an appeal process, but usually this eliminates that from happening. And clear and present danger basically means that it's upon us as law enforcement or a school administrator, if they find out that, could be a student, could be anybody, that they communicate a serious threat of physical violence against a reasonably identifiable victim, or they pose a clear and imminent risk of serious physical injury to himself, herself, or another person as determined by a physician, clinical psychologist, or qualified examiner, or they demonstrate threatening physical or verbal behavior such as violent, suicidal, or assaultive threats, actions, or behavior as determined by the physician, clinical psychologist, qualified examiner, school administrator, or law enforcement official. Gives us much more latitude to kind of file this form with the state police, which we're required to do, and make sure that they do not, if they have a FOID that gets revoked, or if they apply for a FOID, say several years down the road, this is in the system, and they're flagged. So this is the form we actually fill out when this happens. I'm not aware of any instances where we have to fill that form out since I've been here, but that's something that we do. I actually, when I first got here, I made sure I issued a policy on that to make sure that if that does come up, because of the concerns, especially school shootings, mass shootings in other parts of the United States, this is something that I need to make sure that our officers are aware of, and that this is something, a tool that we need to do, be due diligent with, to ensure that we file that form so nobody gets a hold of a firearm if they go to buy one and they're not eligible. So I did bring obviously the gun locks. There's some pamphlets there on gun safety. There's also a pledge for those that have children here that you kind of do. It's basically kind of a promise where they know not to touch firearms, and that if they have questions about firearms, they talk to their parent, and the parent explains it to them. I have 2 boys and a daughter. Both my sons are, they're college age. But when they were younger, they did have a lot of questions. I did at one point take them shooting. I started out, very young, just not much. I didn't let them do much. And then as they got older, they got a little more inquisitive. But one of the best things, though, as being a parent, it's very hard to teach your own child. I remember that from coaching sports with them. They don't listen as well. They listen to other parents better than they listen to me. So I always would have some other instructor, if it came to firearms, I let them teach them. Because they were actually certified as firearm instructors, and they did a much better job, actually. So to be perfectly honest with you, it kept my blood pressure a little bit lower. Yeah. So if you have a friend and you sometimes it works better just that way. I'd rather have them know about the tools that I use as a law enforcement officer, but I told them as kids, I go, you may go into a house and some kid, what do you do if some kid pulls out a gun? What do you do if some kid pulls out a gun and it looks real, but you don't know if it is or not? I go, these are the times we live in. It's a little different than years ago. I remember running around with cap guns when I was a kid. You don't see too many kids running around with cap guns anymore because it's a different day and age. And we've taken it to a different level, and it's, it is. It's concerning. That's why I say, if you see anything that just concerns you, please call the police and let us investigate. That's the best way for us to determine, and we're here to serve you. That's our job. And we're going to do it the best we can. And the biggest thing we want to prevent, we really, really want to prevent anybody from getting hurt. We want a safe community, and that's what this is all about. And the police, we can be out in a lot of places, but really the residents, people that come through here, the business owners, they're the ones. There's so many more eyes out there, and it's really upon you all to let us know what's going on. And everybody here, I could tell, is concerned, and it's good. And I can tell you that I just looked at our, on a side note, I looked at our crime statistics from last month, and although I was a little concerned because we had a couple incidents, our crime numbers are down compared to this time last year. We're still down, so that makes me very happy that the officers are out there doing their job. I can't, I'm the administrator of the department, but the officers that are out on the street doing their job, they're the ones that are keeping the community safe. And they're doing it with your help. And that makes me proud. I'm very happy to be here, as I said, when I started this conversation tonight. So I think we're actually running pretty good right on time. About an hour is what I anticipated with plus a Q&A. So that's the first question.
There's a question.
I can grab, does somebody want to grab a wall or stand with me? And so that's okay. You can sure. I'm sorry, what? Because you really don't know where the bullet's going to go. Water does actually slow bullets down, but you still don't know. And you could, if you shot it into a lake, lead contaminates the water, and there's wildlife in the water, such as fish or turtles, or depending on where you're at. So you may, there's a couple things that may be going on why you shouldn't do that. So it's just really the best thing to do environmentally, and just in terms of the wildlife that may be in that lake. So that's why we tell people not to do that. So does LEOSA cover the off-duty officer? It does. The off-duty officer, so for LEOSA, that'll cover the off-duty officer, like if I travel out of state, If I'm within this state and I'm a law enforcement officer within this state, I have actually a little more, I can carry the gun pretty much anywhere, off duty, unless it's restricted by, like if I go into a stadium, I have to lock up my gun and then I get it when I come out. That's something that's going to implement. Years ago, we used to be able to carry, but that was just a rule enacted, depending on what stadium you go, they usually have you lock up. There's some stadiums now that still don't, lock up your gun.
So if you're off duty and you can open carry in a park?
Not open carry.
Okay.
Like I said, there should be no open carry unless the officer's on duty,
Okay.
in uniform, with some markings that indicate that they're the police. It doesn't, the officer would not get arrested for carrying, open carry. Legally, they can't be charged with anything, but I'd be concerned as the chief of police if I had an officer wearing shorts, carrying a gun, didn't have any police markings on them, and they were just doing it off duty. They were just carrying their gun openly. That'd be a concern. I've never seen that before, but they wouldn't be in violation of any criminal law, but probably some policies within the police department. So, let me get this next one here. Are guns registered, are guns required to be registered? No, they're not. That's actually a topic I really don't want to touch upon just because there's a lot of political attachment to it, but it is not required to be registered. You don't have to register a firearm. Now, your purchases that when you purchase a gun from a gun dealer, the ATF keeps track of that transaction. But the system that they use, like a law enforcement officer would have to call up to try to trace that transaction with ATF. But again, that is just the original purchase. So if you purchased the gun originally from a gun dealer, that gun it's not registered, but it is on file with the federal government, with ATF. If you sell that gun to a private person, the only thing that's tracked is the transaction itself, not the gun. So there's no, like the serial number, they don't know that you have that gun, the state police don't have that. That's something that's not required. Chicago, if you recall, years ago, Chicago required gun registration for many, many years. I don't believe that takes place anymore. I'm not 100% sure because I'm not a resident of Chicago anymore. But years ago, you used to have to lawfully own a gun in Chicago, you had to register it. But you could only register it if you were a security guard or a law enforcement officer, or you were grandfathered in from way back when. So, but we don't require in Lincolnwood that you have to have a registered firearm. It's not required. So those are the two cards.
No, there's some more. Here's another question for you. What do you and your officers worry about or prepare for when you're responding to a call when you think firearms may be present at the place of the call?
So it depends on what the call is. Obviously, there's, depending on how we gauge our response, is it an in-progress call, or are you just taking a cold report? Is it a domestic incident? There's a lot of different things that go through an officer's head when they're responding to a call. And we do have a concern for weapons. Obviously, domestics are volatile incidents a lot of times. So if there's, the one thing that our dispatch system that we have, it can flag addresses from previous calls and the type of calls that we've had, or if there's been weapons involved, or there's cautions. Sometimes there's mental health cautions. It could be weapons cautions, could be, there might be a dog on the premise, or could be a violent dog on the premise. Our CAD system can capture all that, so they can go back and give us that information when we're in response to a call. So those are things that officers do have to think about. It's very common though, if we go to a domestic call, to, when we encounter the parties that are involved, say, need to ask you, are there any firearms in the house? Are you in possession of any firearms at the time while you're talking to me? Just for officer safety purposes. Sure. Those officer safety purposes are not just for the officer, they're for all the people involved. We don't want to see anybody get hurt police don't respond thinking, hey, we want to have violence or we want to get in a fight. We don't want that. We want things to run smooth, and hopefully we get through a call where nobody gets arrested, nobody violates the law. But unfortunately, in realistic times, we do know that some people do violate the law, and people do carry guns, and they carry knives. So we have to take precautions, and those precautions are a lot of times what we do is first, we ask them. If obviously they're involved in a physical confrontation, we may have to put our hands on them first, and when we do that, we're obviously checking them, telling them to relax. Hey, we're gonna patch you down for weapons, we want what's in your pockets. That's a normal protocol for officers responding on certain calls.
Thank you. Another question was, does Lincolnwood offer money for guns as larger cities do to get them off the street?
So currently, I'm not aware of any gun buyback program within Lincolnwood. I had participated myself where I previously worked in Evanston in gun buyback programs. I think it's one of those things. It's a program. I truly don't know what the impact is. It's very hard to measure. I know that in my previous experience, you know, sometimes we do get recovery gun that was used in a crime. We try to guarantee, you know, basically immunity, but it's very hard to guarantee anonymity when somebody's turning in a gun. I mean, if somebody turns in a gun that's used in a homicide, I mean, realistically, thank you for turning the gun in, but we probably want to talk to you. So, I mean, I don't, but, you know, you know, and we're very lucky that technology has helped us investigate shootings. You know, shell casings are one of our best, kind of one of our best intelligence things when it comes to resources when it comes to shootings, because shell casings can be traced now. There's software that has the extraction marks. It shows, and we can link a firearm with shell casings to other incidents that have occurred. So that was something that was fortunately we can work. Not, you know, the violent crime rate in this town is very, 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 very low, and that's an excellent thing. Where I came from, the crime rate was a little bit higher, and you know, we use those shell casings to determine where that gun is getting moved from. We've seen guns move from the south side of Chicago to Evanston, back to Chicago. Those guns are transported all over the place and sold. They're a commodity, and the gangs use those guns and they trade them all the time. So we see, you know, it's not uncommon to have a gun used in different incidents, sometimes even murders. Because again, it is a commodity, it belongs to the group, and they transfer, and they know they're not, you know, as much as people say that they're not extremely intelligent for being involved in what they're involved in, some of them are pretty savvy, and they know that we are looking at that. They know we're checking those and determining where those guns are being used, and it does help us. And sometimes it doesn't.
There's a couple others that were already asked, so I'm just gonna acknowledge that a couple of questions were already answered, so I'm not gonna read them again. But there is a question here. How can I ask other parents if or how they store guns in their home before I let my child go over to play?
Great question. Like I said, I've been asked that question as a parent when my kids were younger. I think, one, you know, it's, hopefully you know that parent where your child is going to visit. That helps, obviously, if you're friends, for sure. If you're not friends, I think the best approach is try to be nice about it. Try to say, listen, as a parent, I'm concerned, I have concerns, nothing, and they're not concerns directed at anybody other than just general safety, and hey, I just want to know. I have no problem if you own a gun, and that's fine, I just want to make sure that it's kept safe.